So, Paul, how do you tell somebody that their startup sucks?
Well, let me just start by saying that I love telling people that their startups suck. It's probably the highest value thing that you can do for any person.
Hi, I'm Paul Bigger, founder of Circle CI.
I'm Edith Harba, CEO and co-founder at Launch Darkly.
And you're listening to Be Continuous, a podcast about continuous delivery and software development.
You can get in touch with us anytime at our Twitter handle @ContinuousCast.
The show is brought to you by Heavybit. To learn more, visit heavybit.com. And while you're there, check out their library, home to great educational talks from other developer company founders and industry leaders.
So I actually am the opposite. I hate telling people that their startups suck because usually I don't know anything about their field. I don't know anything about their area. So people, I do advising for my accelerator, and they ask me to give feedback on their pitch. And I'm like, I don't know the drone business.
I think it's generally fairly easy to tell whether someone's startup sucks, and I don't think it actually relates to the content of their thing. So someone's startup usually will suck if they have a very strong idea of what they want to build and haven't done much validating. That's typically how I tell people that their startup sucks, that you haven't validated this at all you have is an idea. There's a 99% chance that this is going to fail because everybody else's startups in the same position would fail. They validated their way into something that succeeds.
I mean, that's fair. I guess, so why do you enjoy it though?
So it's just super high value. So when you tell someone that their startup sucks and they internalize it, which I'd say happens about 60, 70% of the time, they go back and they kind of look at what they were doing and realize that they've been wasting all this time, which is obviously a very sad thing. But they also, most of them at least, come out of it and say, okay, well, now I need to know what to do. I'm dedicated to doing this thing. And now I need to know that I need to validate, I need to build, I need to take the thing that I'm doing and they take it to someone. So I was talking to my friend about this, and she had this idea about startups, about sharing hotel rooms, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So I'm like, I can't tell you whether that idea itself is bad, but I can tell you that if you build it, it will be bad. What you should do is you should just go talk to people, stop them on the street and ask them, would they use this? Or what would make them use this? And she did. And what she learned was that people under 30, sometimes, people over 30, absolutely no way.
Yeah.
And that was valuable feedback.
I mean, I don't even like to share a hotel room with my sister anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
but I didn't know whether it was a bad idea. I mean, I sensed that it was a bad idea. But all you have to do is ask a bunch of potential customers. You'll figure out whether it's a bad idea.
Well, I think the key is potential customers. I got really tired of the lean hacks for asking people in a coffee shop. If you asked 10 people in a coffee shop about Circle CI, they would be like, pfft.
I think asking people in a coffee shop is wonderful.
I think it's wonderful if you're a certain kind of idea, but
yeah, consumer, obviously.
Yeah, so if you ask 10 people in a coffee shop, not in the Bay Area, if they're in favor of automated continuous integration.
Yeah, no, of course not. I mean, that's obvious. But if you ask 10 people in a coffee shop in Milan what they think about your fashion startup, you'd probably get some good feedback.
You might not be able to understand it if you don't speak Italian, though.
So the reason I like telling them is that just you rarely have the opportunity to change someone's life, right? But someone when you give them successful career advice, you can literally change their future. So people who are spending, I talked to these guys they had spent 70K of their parents' money on a startup and they had 30K left. And they were just going the same way. They were going to lose it all.
Well, I guess the hard part is when you see people going off of a cliff and they don't really see that cliff.
They don't see the cliff.
Right.
But you can tell them, look, you can't see it, but there's a cliff right there.
Well, some good friends of mine, he came to me because he's like, we got about 3 months of cash left. We're not able to raise money.
Right.
What should we be doing? And I ran through everything I thought they should be doing, lay off half the people, try to start charging as much as you can right now.
Yeah.
And they took one piece of advice, which they did try to start charging, and they couldn't make enough money, but it was not enough to raise an A.
Yeah.
And so they had to lay off everybody and shut down.
It's better that you told him that than you didn't tell him that, right?
I think he was looking for a magic.
There isn't a magic thing to. I mean, validating is as close to magic as you get, but you have to ask those questions when there's a reasonable amount of time left. If you ask the question when you have no money left, we're going to shut down today, wave your magic wand. It's no, there is no magic wand.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you're around to tell people that their startups suck. How do you do this as a service? What if a listener wanted advice?
I've thought about this. I've thought about creating a little landing page, and you can pay me $100 and I'll tell you how your startup sucks.
Great.
It's $100, not because I want your $100, but because I want someone who's actually cares enough to listen to my advice to pay $100.
Well, we'll see by the time the show comes out if we have that up.
Awesome. So why does outsourcing early development suck?
Oh my God, on so many levels. Number one, you want people who are part of your company and part of your culture and talking to your customers.
You mean the people who build your product
Yes.
should be? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. They should be as close to your customers as humanly possible. This is why one of the reasons, for example, that our engineers took support tickets.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was very important that they have...
Ours did that for the first 2 years.
So number one, you want to have rock step alignment between engineers and customers. And you do that by all being co-located in the same place so that you're all continually kind of breathing the same air, talking the same talk.
So you don't even believe in having a distributed team at this stage?
Not super early, no. I know people who make it work, and maybe they're better than us. Like, I know other companies who do it, but for us, it was very important that we all be co-located and that we even come in, like, we'll work from home some days, but we'll come into the office every day.
Right. So I had very much the same idea, like outsourcing anything. Whenever someone comes to me and asks, how do we outsource? I'm like, don't. And especially if it's a time zone that's not your time zone.
I think there's plenty of things that an early stage startup could outsource, like accounting.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
but not product development.
Not corp. Like your business is two things when you're early, and that's building a product and building a culture. And if you're outsourcing your development, you're doing neither.
So when you outsource your development, the whole point of early startups is validation, right? You've got some experiment that you want to validate, and you need to turn it around immediately.
Yeah.
And having a time period where you need to email someone and then you get the response the next day because they're in Ukraine or they're in India or wherever they are is just ridiculous.
And so there's number one, there's the lag, there's the gap then between potential customer empathy.
Tell me more about that.
Like, for example, I was on a product where we sold to newspaper editors and we tried to outsource to India. Like, they just didn't really understand the culture.
They don't know what a newspaper editor in the US needs.
And then you just have a lot of cultural differences.
So you find it hard to explain to them what it is that you're really trying to build?
Cultural differences about, like, I found in particular, America has a very adversarial culture sometimes. They'll just say, hey, that idea is bullshit, or what do you mean, or that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Versus other cultures where they don't want to challenge authority, where they'll go away for 2 weeks and come back and you're like, this isn't what I wanted at all.
Right, okay, yeah.
And they're like, well, I was afraid to ask.
Yeah.
I didn't want to look dumb and ask.
Gotcha. And so if there's no connection, if they don't see you every day in the office, or that sort of thing, that they're not going to have the ability to talk to you and ask, basically.
Even that there's a cultural gap. And so, like, the worst case was somebody said they were going to build, like, what was it, like an Apache 5 updater. And after 3 weeks, we're like, hey, where's the code? And it turned out he'd written zero code. He had no idea how to do it, but he was too ashamed to admit it.
Wow.
So cultural differences, time lag differences, cultural within the team and then within the customer itself, speed.
So the biggest thing for me isn't necessarily speed so much, but it's sort of tangentially related. I get startups that ask me like, oh, I have this really good idea. I just need to raise a bit of money so that we can outsource the development and they can build the thing. And the problem is that what they're hoping to happen is that they will get back a product, a working product. But the working product is not useful anyway because you need to keep iterating. And you need to build that into your company that we understand the product space, we understand where things have gone right, where things have gone wrong. And the optimal solution for outsourcing is they actually do what you tell them and reply with the thing that you wanted them to build. And that the best case isn't sufficient either because the thing that you wanted to build is right today until you talk to customers, and then it's wrong tomorrow, and then you need to go do that again, and you spent your 25K or 50K or 100K on development, and you got the product back, and the product almost definitionally can't be the right product.
Yeah, and there's so much last minute fit and finish. So I used to be a spec writer. I would write requirements, and like invariably, there's interpretation when it comes to a spec.
Right.
And the reaction at one point was like, let's try to put more and more into the spec until basically they collapse under their own weight and nobody can lift them.
Yeah.
But you're still missing...
You may as well write the code at that point.
Yeah, but you still miss a lot of nuance in the final steps.
Right.
Like, hey, we have all the spec, but when we started to put it together, like, hey, maybe we need this other use case, or like we noticed that like...
There's no type checking or unit tests in the spec. And so when you start to try to actually build it, you realize that these two things are contradictory, and then what are you going to do?
Oh, yeah. Or just like all the fit and finish stuff, or like, what if you realize that there's actually this corner case that you designed a lot for, but that you don't need anymore?
So to finish this out, what would you say to a startup which told you, we're planning to outsource?
I would say, what is your core competency? And I come back to what I said before, that your core competency of a startup should be building a culture and building a product. And that by outsourcing, building a product, you're not doing either. So Paul, what do you like about chocolate so much?
I think it's sugar. I think I'm fundamentally addicted to sugar. And I think, as far as I can tell from everything I've read, sugar is a poison and you really shouldn't eat sugar. But my 3 favorite foods are ice cream, pastries, and chocolate. And I don't think there's very much I can do about this, unfortunately.
So it's funny because as I've gotten older, I've started to like sugar less and less. Like I was a little kid who literally, when I went to church, I would leap up at the end of the service and run down the aisle.
Because there's like donuts downstairs or something.
Yeah, because my parents didn't have sweets, but there would be cookies. So I would like leave around all the old ladies like hugging each other and like dive into the cookie jar.
So I think I had the
But
opposite
now,
thing.
I don't really like sweets anymore. Like,
So I think when I was a kid, I didn't have ready access to sweets.
oh, it was only at church.
Oh, only at church.
That's
Okay.
why I was so excited, is because every Sunday I got a cookie.
Right. Well, we didn't necessarily have, like, we weren't sugarless, but I think once I sort of had my own money and I was just like, I can buy chocolate anytime I like now. It's like when you're an adult, you can suddenly buy bacon anytime you like, and it's not very good.
Well, I did like sugar a lot as a kid. Like I remember I would buy pixie sticks, which to me now seem revolting. Like, do they have pixie sticks?
It doesn't ring a bell.
It's literally a stick full of powdered sugar.
Oh, so I don't even like just pure sugar. I like milk chocolate, and people complain a lot about milk chocolate. People are like on the dark chocolate bandwagon a lot these days. All the hippies with their coffee and their strange mustaches. They like dark chocolate, but I think dark chocolate isn't sweet enough for me. I like a really creamy, sweet chocolate.
So it's the sugar you like.
It's the sugar, yeah.
Well, so
I gave it up for a month, and I had withdrawal symptoms. I had like headaches and lucid dreams and nightmares and waking up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night.
did you ever have a lucid dream within a lucid dream?
You know, I may have had.
I have those, and they're really freaky.
That is fucking freaky.
No, it happens to me. You know, like when you're
Frequently.
Like, yeah.
I do have dreams where like I realize that they're a dream,
Yeah.
and I can sort of make a decision as to whether I'm going to stop, but they're usually not about chocolate.
Well, the freakiest dreams are you realize you're in a dream and you wake up, but you're really still in a dream.
You wake up from the dream in the dream. Interesting. And this is completely unrelated to sugar, because you, from the sound of it, don't go nuts on sugar.
Yeah, so I think your lucid dreams are independent of sugar.
They only happen when I give up sugar for a month, which is something I need to do routinely to like scale back my sugar consumption.
So you're saying if I ate more sugar, I would stop having these weird dreams?
Well, I was confused as to whether it was sugar withdrawal or whether it was theobromine withdrawal.
Say that again?
Theobromine, it's the caffeine-like active ingredient in chocolate.
I learned something new today.
Yeah. And it's addictive in the same way that caffeine is, and it has a lot of the same properties. And I had basically coffee-like withdrawal symptoms.
It's interesting. So the Mormons used to be a huge customer of mine when I was at a different company.
Did you say the Mormons?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Church of Latter-day Saints. So they have very strict rules.
The church itself was your customer?
Yes.
The local church or the
grand organization in the Salt Lake City.
Okay, yeah.
Because they have a ton of content that they want to manage. They're not allowed to drink alcohol or caffeine.
Yeah.
So the salesperson would bring them chocolate.
Oh, okay, yeah. So just like you bring me chocolate for every podcast episode.
Well, you know, I got to bring
Sweetening them up a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, well, thank you for wearing your Launch Starkly t-shirt.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, so chocolate, it's funny because I could take it or leave it, but you seem to love it.
Yeah, no, I love it. Today's brand, Nirvana Belgian Chocolates, organic Belgian milk chocolate with speculoos cookie. This is, I think, the best one we've had so far.
Really?
Yeah.
So this gets into the whole topic of customer gifts, which I've started to get as we moved up the food chain.
I get gifts from VCs.
Oh, what do you get?
I got a jacket from DFJ.
What?
I got a Chromecast from Bessemer.
What?
got
Like
some-
for the holidays, or
Yeah, and Bessemer actually sent me like a rickshaw carrier bag.
you got a jacket from DFJ?
Yeah.
What kind?
It's a little too big for me, but it's like a big puffy sort of thing you get from Uniqlo. That
I saw Chirag wearing one of those.
Yeah.
I feel so. Is that like what you get after you get a B round?
Well, they did our A.
They did our A too.
Well, but they only just did your A.
Yeah, but like they did.
Maybe you'll get it next Christmas.
I'm gonna text my VC.
Did you close? You closed before Christmas?
Oh yeah.
Oh, and they didn't send you a gift.
No.
Rude.
Well, they sent us hoodies,
Oh, yeah, okay.
So the set of hoodies, like it's pretty standard. Like I actually have this burgeoning collection of hoodies.
Do you have a shelf of startup t-shirts and a shelf of startup hoodies?
I try to be pretty vigilant. Like I don't. So the reason why I always ask people if they want a T-shirt before I give it to them is 'cause, like otherwise you just end up with hundreds of T-shirts.
Right.
Like New Year's last year, I took 60 shirts to Goodwill.
Oh, I give away or get rid of or something every, like, if you're a startup and you have ill-fitting t-shirt, it's like no one wants to wear that.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't understand why people make shitty, like the American apparel that like half the startups are a wonderful fit shirt, like the 50/50s. And just if you're making like this shitty cotton, it feels awful, looks awful.
No, a big thing for us is that people like our shirts.
Yeah. Same with circle shirts.
Yeah, no, it was actually really cool. So John, my co-founder, is our chief T-shirt officer.
No, right.
Because he'd been at Atlassian, so he could tell. He's like, okay, here's the kind of shirts we need to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really wanted to make a T-shirt. We meant to do this, but we never did. From the It's the Future thing, put it in a container and continuously deliver that shit. There needs to be a T-shirt.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I wanted to do them yellow, and John's like navy. Everybody wears navy.
He's right. You can have some form of gray, some form of black, some form of navy, but like yellow is not a color anyone wears.
I wear yellow. Yeah, it's funny. It makes me really happy. Like, I went over to hang out with my friend Matt, and he was wearing a Launch Darkly T-shirt.
Nice.
And even Ed,
but it wasn't yellow.
No, it was navy. And even our friend Ed wears his Launch Darkly shirt.
Yeah. And I wear mine all the time. I'm wearing it right now.
Oh, yes, you are, and it looks lovely on you. So, chocolate, good vendor gift or bad vendor gift?
Strong vendor gift.
Perishable, though.
Chocolate lasts a while. The problem is that they might be allergic to dairy or sugar.
Yeah. What else did I get? I got coffee and I got wine.
Coffee definitely perishes. Well, wine is a good gift. I feel in San Francisco, you give people whiskey instead.
Really?
Yeah, like you're giving someone a nice whiskey.
I don't drink whiskey.
Well, my friend worked at Stripe, and the Collisons just get all sorts of gifts, like just baskets, and so like you can kind of wander over to their desk, and if you want a really nice whiskey, just like take it, because what are they going to do with their 100th bottle of really nice whiskey?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so it is interesting though that I think we're a Circle customer. We've never gotten a gift.
Circle doesn't really do gifts to people. We do some if people have been very helpful. We had one vendor who sent us cake.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't say that they screwed us, but the bug in their application completely screwed us. This is a story that we still can't really tell. But like as a result of them, we ended up doing something really bad accidentally to customers.
This would be a really interesting story if there are any details in it.
I'm going to wait until people go public.
This is like this one time this bad thing happened, but I can't tell you any details.
Anyway,
Great story, Paul.
In the end, they sent us cake and it was happily ever after.
Anyway, Paul, why do flat organizations suck?
I could tell you about 20 million different reasons why flat organizations suck. But basically, they're founded on, I think, this incorrect premise that hierarchy is bad.
Yeah, that hierarchy is bad and should be avoided at all costs.
Right. And there's a sort of a school of thought that like everything that engineers don't really like is bad, and so we should cut them out.
Meetings are bad.
Meetings are bad, hierarchy is bad, process is bad, project management is bad, managers are bad.
It's like a Dilbert cartoon where it's like...
Right.
Everybody around me is pointy-headed.
Right, and I think it originates because everyone has really bad experiences with a bad manager, with a bad organization, with something that was poisonous or toxic, so that's definitely true. But when you see it done really well, or when you see the kind of logical implication of flatness, and when you try to really make it work, and then you're like, oh, I don't really know what to do now to solve this problem. And then you end up sort of reinventing hierarchy in a flat-ish kind of way.
So I got happy hour with some friends yesterday, and we were talking about if you claim you have a flat org, you have a hierarchy, but it's just unacknowledged.
Right.
So and unofficial, which is even more awful because people don't know how to get stuff done.
So there's this
like
essay.
we want to. This person is doing a bad job. Who do I complain to? We want to hire 4 more people.
Right.
Or this business unit isn't doing well.
There's an essay called The Tyranny of Structurelessness, and it's about the sort of women's sort of feminism movement in the 70s and maybe earlier, where they deliberately went for a structurelessness organization. I think the idea was that part of the problem of the patriarchy is hierarchy. And they ended up just having tyranny is the word that they used. And it came about that just power wasn't earned anymore. Power was sort of like politicked in. It became who you knew. People formed cliques and power like formed into those cliques. And in order to get anything done, it all became about how, like who you knew in order to make anything happen. And when you hear about, let's say GitHub famously had that flat organization, and what you hear from insiders at GitHub is, any engineer could work on anything that they found important if they were friends with the co-founders or, maybe one of the first 10 engineers.
Yeah, and then it's just it's I like your word poisonous, because there is a structure, there is a hierarchy. It's just under-acknowledged.
So I spent some time trying to figure out how to work around this, because we really tried hard for flat at Circle. And the answer that I had was areas of responsibility. And that's Asana's sort of form of flatness, or they have a little bit of flatness. And the idea is that basically everyone in the organization has things that they're responsible for. And there's a document that says this person is the number one person who knows about t-shirts, or the number one person who knows about this product area. And they're simultaneously responsible and knowledgeable about that.
An owner.
An owner is a good way of thinking about it, and you can build all sorts of processes around how ownership transitions and or how you can take ownership or that sort of thing.
The inputs and outputs.
Right. And I think it's a very good idea if you're into the flatness, because one of the things that's missing from flatness is ownership and accountability.
Yeah.
And this institutes some amount of ownership and accountability. And accountability, I think, is the essential thing that flatness doesn't really encourage.
I think flatness is not the same as organization.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So I just took Michael Deering's course on management.
Oh, really? I did his finance course. It was amazing.
His course was so good.
Right.
We read Andy Grove's book, which I love. Mm-hmm. And because I'm an engineer.
This is High Output Management?
Yeah, have you read it?
I've started to read it several times.
So it's great. I mean, you can borrow my copy now, but it's great because he looked at management as a system. And I'm a systems engineer. And he says the job of a good manager is to get high output out of their organization.
Right. And he invented OKRs, right, in that book?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I liked it. I mean, he was very much pro managers. Your responsibility is to make sure that your organization performs, which I think a flat, what you just said, is kind of missing that like
right.
who tunes all these pieces?
Well, the assumption is with flat is that everyone that you hire is amazing and knows exactly what needs to get done. And perhaps that survives, at 5 people, maybe as far as 10 people. But there comes to the point where the overhead of trying to understand what you need to do is so high that it just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, I mean, well, and then there's things that need to have some sort of higher function. Like, what 3 people are we going to hire next year?
Or, what is the product roadmap? You can have 10 people each decide what their own version of the product roadmap should be. And the end result is that no product roadmap will be built. Or 10% of a product roadmap will be built and everyone's going in different directions and no one is on the same page.
Well, it's kind of the bizarre theory of management then.
So actually, I think this is responsible for this. When you say bazaar, I'm thinking of...
The cathedral.
So Eric S. Raymond's essay. And people have this open source development methodology, right, in their mind. Developers understand how open source works. You come up with a pull request. Code talks, talk walks, or whatever that thing is. And it's just complete crap because you need to have everyone on the same page. And this is why so many open source products are shit, because they don't have a single person who's saying, this is the page that we're on. This is what's getting built next. Don't bring me your shitty pull request. Bring me something that's on the product roadmap.
Well, and even more than that, I mean, it's very then painful to that person. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah.
I
There's
remember
nothing worse. And this is where I lost almost a lot of friends, and certainly a lot of employee love, is that I would kill their PRs just before they're ready to ship.
And you spent
Right, they spent so long on them, and I hadn't gotten in my head the idea that we need to decide what to build before we spend a whole bunch of time on it.
Yeah, because it's extremely expensive then. And I mean, not just expensive for time, but expensive in opportunity cost and employee morale.
Right.
I mean, this happened to me. We built something for several months. We went to present it to the VP of product. He's like, this is shit. I don't want to ship it.
Right.
Crushing.
Of course, yeah. The way around that is to take the product roadmap, the direction that the company wants to go, find the bit of it that's most exciting to you, and then take ownership of that. And then when you ship that, you already know, and obviously you're not just shipping it, you're bringing it back in multiple steps and getting feedback along the way. There's a really good article by a guy called Sean Lynch, who was a PM at...
I know Sean.
Yeah, you know Sean. And so he was a PM at Dropbox. And he said that one of the things that really enabled them to grow was the shared vocabulary around how to ship products.
Yeah.
And they called it phase 0, phase 1, and phase 2.
Yeah.
And in phase 0, you're kind of getting rough alignment on kind of what is to build. But we don't want to hear any of your bullshit about like the words are wrong.
Yeah.
That's a phase 2 problem. The phase 2 is the time that you sweat all the details, and phase 1 is somewhere in between.
Yeah, I mean, so I learned this back when I was a consultant. So, I would have projects and we would be very careful about not putting too much detail into a wireframe. Because as soon as...
Right, because once people figure the wireframe looks done, then they think it's done.
And then they fixate on that, and then you're like,
Yeah.
no, this was just trying to get consensus. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, I know you hate waterfall, but I think waterfall is actually very good if you think of it as let's have checkpoints before we continue to invest in something.
Yeah. There's definitely some value to that.
You admitted there's value in waterfall?
I admit there's value in checkpoints.
Can we just
No, because I did not agree that waterfall is good. I agreed that the principle of, knowing what it is you're building before you're building it. Can I just say that that's not actually what waterfall means?
generally that was the intent of it, was that you have different phases and you have checkpoints of, is this ready to go to the next phase?
Yes, but each of those phases was like, there's the spec phase and there's the engineering phase. Whereas when we talk about like what Dropbox was doing, there's engineering in each phase. There's customer validation, there's feedback. There's not a concept that we know what we're building and we're just going to like drive that through 5 phases to the end.
So I did experience waterfall, and there was some extent of like you would get to different phases and he'd be like, hey, we're not going to drive this to the end.
So what you're saying is there's good waterfall and bad waterfall?
I think waterfall, we've talked about this before. I think waterfall gets maligned, and what it was trying to prevent was what you just said of like, if you allow the wrong side of feedback at the wrong time, it can be very destructive.
So it seems like it is possible that there's a good waterfall, but maybe 99% of waterfall is bad waterfall. I think probably the same is true in flat.
I think what you just said resonated a lot about GitHub and how the way they thought the open source world worked, which was people just contributing. If it's good, it gets in.
Yeah.
And then like when you look at it, it's like, no, there's actually a lot of hurt feelings.
Right.
And the same with their org structure. They're like, well, good ideas will win. It's like, well, win what?
Yeah.
And if I don't get along with somebody or if there's a disagreement, who do I go to?
I think it is possible to do flat well, but I think the problem is that almost every attempt to do flat well has failed.
Well, let's define what you mean by flat.
That's a really good point, because I think most people don't define what they mean by flat. And this was a problem at Circle, that everyone had their own version of what flat was and what flat meant. And to some it was like, no one will tell me what to do. And to some it was like, everyone takes responsibility for their own thing. And some was like, ideas will find their way to the top.
Yeah, it's like you should read Andy Grove's book, but he talks about how this guy he hated the Intel style, which was very, for lack of, not as an insult, but management driven.
Yeah.
Like you have people who approve decisions and who coordinate between groups. And he's like, I'm tired of this. I'm going to go to this other company where I can do whatever I want to do. And he came back in 6 months. They asked him why, and he's like, because everybody at that company did whatever they wanted to do. And so nothing was
right.
Everybody was just cowboying.
So there's this idea that in your startup, you basically get one innovation, right? And the number one innovation that you should be doing is your product, right? Any time spent innovating on management structure and many other things is time that could be spent innovating on product.
I initially thought I completely disagree with you, but now I circled back and agree with you. So we talked about this in another episode, but I think you're doing two things when you're a startup. You're defining your product and you're defining your culture.
Right.
And I think where people go awry is when they try to be too innovative.
Yeah. You can have a little bit of innovation. You can decide that there's going to be a pool table rather than the traditional ping pong table. Right. But if you spend too much time innovating, and if you spend too much time on that innovation rather than on your product innovations, you're probably going to end up in a bad place.
Well, like Zappos is kind of struggling with this right now.
Their holacracy thing?
Yeah.
It did them well for many years.
They didn't have holacracy. They tried
didn't they?
No.
Yeah.
They've tried to implement holacracy, and
right.
It's...
Well, like Google did the same thing. They fired all their PMs in like 2001.
Tell me more.
Well, as I understand it, Larry, who was CEO at the time, said that there's too much distance between the CEO and and the engineers, so he fired all the PMs.
This sounds like a line from Shakespeare, like first thing we do.
And then very shortly afterwards, Eric Schmidt was brought in as the CEO to be Larry's like adult supervision.
And
then they hired PMs later.
Yeah, this reminds me of it was at a company that got acquired as a product manager, and this other company had no product manager, so it's like, did they take them all out and shoot them? Like, where are the product?
Well, it could be like Circle. We just never hired PMs.
But you have them now.
We have them now because that was lunacy.
It was a limitation.
Yeah.
I think everybody has a different idea of what flat means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you heard of the Heroku way? So this is something I've heard from several prominent early Heroku people, that they had this sort of unspoken thing about how stuff was done at Heroku. It was the Heroku way, but no one ever defined what the Heroku way was. And whenever some team would go off and do things, their opinion of the Heroku way, basically they would get like subtly corrected by Adam. And it turned out that the Heroku way was really like Adam's vision.
So tell me, what was the Heroku way?
No one ever knew. It was like everyone had their own idea of what the Heroku way was. It was like flat. It was undefined, and it was just a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, because ultimately that's very harmful because you don't know what you're working towards.
Right.
And you develop a culture. We talked about this before. Like if you have animals that get an unexpected pattern for food, they basically go insane.
Right. So you think flat is like insanity for engineers?
Sometimes, if like what you said of like I did all this work, I wrote all this code,
yeah,
and you don't like it, like
it doesn't ship.
Yeah.
Engineers go insane when things don't ship.
And well, when that happens 3 times, you're like, what am I doing wrong?
You start to burn out.
Yeah, and you start to say like, fuck this, like, why do I come to work every day?
Exactly, right, and that very succinctly is why flat sucks. Okay, so you wanted to talk about Hacker News comments, but I've no idea what you want to say about Hacker News comments.
What do you think about Hacker News comments?
Modern comments? They are alternatively phenomenally shit and utterly amazing. So I've noticed in particular, like Hacker News has gotten Redditified. There's a whole bunch of like really low value like quips that actually are what make Reddit really good. If you're deep in the Reddit community, as I once was, I had a very strong Reddit addiction for many years.
As a poster or as a reader?
Almost entirely as a reader.
Yeah, well, those are 2 different things.
Yeah, but it's very funny, and you often get like the high quality humor like voted to the top. It's kind of low quality humor. It's like puns and memes and that sort of thing.
Hey,
let's not get started about puns. But it's like Reddit memes, right? It's someone says something that's hilarious because it's a pun on something the entire community understands. And people are trying to bring this to Hacker News, and it's just utter low value there. The thing that's amazing about Hacker News is that people who really understand their shit, like there'll be a comment about, oh, Google did this and it was terrible, and someone's like, oh, I worked at Google during that period on that team, and here's how it actually went down.
Yeah.
Or someone will say something about a programming language, and then like Walter Bright, who wrote D, will like come along and say, well, here's how we actually think about this thing, or like the Rust team, or all that shit.
Or like when Atlassian acquired Trello.
Right.
Like the Trello CEO like was jumping in on threads.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. And Spolsky comments on there, and like, yeah. So I think a lot of the value of Hacker News is that it's sort of the community water cooler, and everyone who's in the community is on Hacker News and reads Hacker News, and there's nothing that you can't get to the top of Hacker News without the people involved noticing and often getting involved.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, I was at a Microsoft event, and the VPs care. Like, one of the VPs was proud that like they got on Hacker News a couple times for some big news.
Yeah. Like that used to be a thing for startups, and now it's a. I was talking to some people at Google, and I was like, "What are your goals for this launch?" It's like, "Well, we wanted to be number 1 on Hacker News."
But I think it's kind of a vanity metric in some ways.
It is and it isn't. Like if you do something which doesn't rate in some way on Hacker News, and it's for the developer community or for the sort of startup community, is it really that much value?
Well, I guess something that we talk about is do VP of engineering at, non-Silicon Valley, if that's your market, read Hacker News.
Should they or do they?
Do they?
That's a good question. I would say they probably do. So I moved to New York recently. Everyone there reads Hacker News just as much as...
Well, you're. I mean, not to pick on you, Paul, but you're a little bit probably in your own little
Silicon
Alley bubble there.
So it was
like so that the people Paul knows.
Yeah. I went into the office one day, and people said to me, "Oh, you're number one on Hacker News," and that was people who I didn't know, but they knew who. I don't know how this happened or why I'm talking about this, but like I had a thing where I was number one on Hacker News earlier this year, and like everyone knows because everyone reads it.
What were you number one for?
It was for It's the Future.
Oh, it was resurfaced?
Yeah, sometime in like August or September.
That's a good article.
Yeah, it's good. I liked it.
If anybody who missed it, they can, go read it or check out our podcast.
Yeah, we did a whole podcast about it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a good example of it, that you see the people, in the comments on that, you see a bunch of people who really understand the topics and can really dig in and sort of explain how we got there. But also like it's marred with like low quality comments and people who are being assholes and it's getting a lot worse as well. And it's been getting a lot worse for like 7 years.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sometimes there could be people, just like with any anonymous board, you get people with access to grind.
Yeah. But even without access to grind, I feel that like there needs to be some form of curation that is more than there currently is. So like there's upvotes and there's downvotes, but there's too much shit for the downvotes to deal with it effectively. There's too much. A standard comment that you get on Hacker News is people who just like take the worst possible reading of what just happened, or bring up the if Google launches a product, there's going to be a comment guaranteed that like, oh, how long till they shut this down? I wonder if someone made an open source version of this so they don't shut this down, and that brings no value to the conversation on the particular topic.
Wait, that somebody will, that Google will build a competitor
that Google will shut it down.
Will shut down
whatever service they build or acquire, or maybe you get acquired by Google and someone will be like, oh great, how do I export this?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, that somebody I didn't see. So your use case is like somebody got acquired by Google. How long till Google shuts it down?
Exactly. I mean that is the sort of comment that you would see on Hacker News, and it's not value to discuss that for the 17th time in a row.
Yeah, I mean, so the one that touches a little nerve with me is people make fun of our company.
Right. I mean, you're like a Boolean flag as a service. It's kind of ludicrous.
We're case management at scale, dude.
Case management at scale. Okay. I had a friend in college who would make fun of our like undergrad dissertations, and he'd be like, okay, well, you fixed a bug, you wrote a sorting algorithm. Like just give very like small denigrating descriptions of what we actually do. And I feel Hacker News does that quite a bit.
Well, so I'll say though, at the beginning it annoyed me and now I love it.
Really?
Yeah.
You love people being dicks on Hacker News?
No, I love people making fun of what we're doing because
because it means they don't really understand the value of it and they won't compete. Increases your moat.
Or that they're like, oh, my intern will build this in a weekend with 2 arms behind their back. And I'm like, great. They're going to build a really shitty implementation in a year.
It's wonderful to have the conversation after they build that. It's like all of a sudden you don't really need to convince them of the value of your product anymore. Like CI is totally a thing that you could totally build in a weekend, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, why? Except for like, why?
Except for making it actually work.
Yeah. So I used to, be like, oh, people don't think this is important. Now I'm like, great. That's fine.
So the problem that I have is not that they make these comments, right? It's that they just continually make the same thing. I feel that ever since the Dropbox launch, where someone said, "Oh, I can build this with rsync and whatever," like there hasn't been a single comment like that has brought any value.
Well, I mean that's what so we announced our A round of funding and like several people went off on protracted rants.
Right, exactly, and that's just.
No, I mean like against like they're like this is so like of course we're developers, we could build everything, but why? Like,
and is your argument that there's just little value to having that discussion?
No, I thought it was good that like people are starting to fight back and be like,
But even then, like, so I agree, great that they're fighting back, but like, why have this discussion again? And I see comments on Hacker News where I'm like, I can write a response that says why you're wrong because I've seen it, and I'm just like, why? Like, where's the value with arguing with strangers on the internet?
If you've gotten tired of Hacker News,
well,
have you gotten?
I haven't got tired of Hacker News. Because the good stuff on Hacker News is still really good.
Like, what would you consider? What would you consider good stuff?
Where someone gives like an insightful anecdote about the time they worked on that thing, or where someone who works on the language itself, or whatever the topic is, comes in and answers questions on it. And where those questions are asked in good faith, and where someone's like, I'm interested in how you dealt with the technical challenges of X, as opposed to like, oh, this is bullshit. Your product is shit because X, and then they have to answer from a defensive position rather than everyone trying to like learn stuff from each other.
So you like
Actually, that's it. Hacker News is great because it's a community learning from each other, and Hacker News is shit when people are subverting that for like status and points.
So you like the core, not the Reddit.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of To Be Continuous, brought to you by Heavybit and hosted by me, Paul Bigger of Circle CI, and Edith Harbaugh of Launch Darkly.
To learn more about Heavybit, visit heavybit.com. While you're there, check out their library, home to great educational talks from other developer company founders and industry leaders.